Hello, if you've just joined us nice and early, thank you very much. This is the Empower Hour. We are having an amazing evening. This evening planned for you, just waiting for it to go live. Hi Kiran, how are you? Thank you for being nice
Hi.
and early. And there we are. Perfect timing. If you've just joined us, thank you for being nice and early. We're just about to start the Empower Hour, episode 81. It's really exciting, actually. We have a tremendous guest this evening for you. Kikoki. Well, you're here, Kiran, so we're going to start nice and early. So, welcome everybody on behalf of Salam Radio, the Inspired Tribe, and myself, Sukhi Wahiwala. This is the Empower Hour show, which is basically a show designed specifically to prove to you that everybody in success didn't necessarily have it given to them with the silver spoon. They had to get up, they had to do something about it, and they had challenges on the way. But they are here to share their stories to empower you to move further forward. So welcome to all of the people who follow us from around the world. We have following from the Inspired Tribe, followers all the way from Fijian Islands all the way through to Brazil and places of that nature. Last week's guest was actually in Brazil. And the Africas, Europe, and North and South Asia. So we're so proud to be consistent in this episode 81. So welcome once again. I'm about to introduce our guest this evening. Our guest this evening is somebody who's really heavily achieved so much in the worlds of giving and creating change historically. She's a historian she's on a third project in a big way in the war environments and the backgrounds of her studies. But she's here this evening to share and to sort of like open up her real life. Her name's Kiran Sahota. You're seeing her there on the stage as well with us. But she's going to show you how she was just from a humble background to turning up to somebody who was a torchbearer for the Olympic Games 2012. What a sincere offer through her vision, her mission, and as she says in her own words, her sheer beast within her, which means that she'll never take no for an answer, to live her best herself. Welcome, Kiran. Welcome to the Empower Hour show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure to have you. It's our honor to have you on the show with us. So, Kiran, there's no hanging about, I'm afraid. There's no niceties. This is a very humble, honest platform where we share and we bear all, really. We just share our real life with our community. This is the Empower. Salam Radio welcomes you. And what I'd like to ask you, first of all, if I may, is kind of like just share us a little bit. You know, today you're a public speaker. You're a maestro in the marketplace. You've been such a successful person in the public arena. You have celebrity friends. You travel around the world speaking. Well, not right now due to COVID, but principally. You've also been a very humble side of you, where you've been such a warm-hearted individual who looked after your grandparents, who were in essence your parents. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Any significant memories that you believe that kind of helps us build a picture of you?
So first of all, thank you for having me, and welcome to all the listeners. It just started like in a small place in Birmingham, and I was very lucky to have the parents and grandparents around me, and it was always like live your best life and be the best that you can be. And you're going to hear me say that quite a lot, because we achieve so much when we are the best that we can be. And that's where it started, really, all the things that you described.
Thank you. So how was it's such a great message, by the way. And the proof of the pudding is that we have young listeners from age 9, 10 upwards, all the through to the 70s. And it's a community radio station as well as an international viewership as well and listenership. So my question to yourself is that we're going to be empowering them just so people can understand what kind of person who is Kiran Sahota. So my question to yourself is, what was school like? Are you one of many? I know you were born, you lived in the Midlands area. So tell us a little bit about your upbringing, please.
So my upbringing was, I think many South Asian families can relate to, where we didn't have a lot of money, and we were just normal working class. and but we had a lot of love. So, my mussy, my aunts and my uncles were quite young. They look after his kids, look after kids. And although we didn't have, like I said, we had a lot of love, schooling was fine. I didn't fall into the subjects that I thought I would. Like maths and science didn't interest me, but the arts really captured me, and that's where I really excelled. And I loved school because I always loved learning and knowing more things. The more knowledge you have, the powerful you become. And so I liked learning about facts and figures and just simple things. And the love for theatre came, like local theatre and national theatre. And yeah, I grew up in Birmingham, but we've always had links to East London. So that's why, there's always, I'm either in London or I'm here, because both are home.
Got it.
And so
there's something lovely that you shared there. I mean, you mentioned you were brought up by your grandparents, and your parents as well. It's a very close-knit environment. But you were actually involved in, theatre and things of that sort of nature, and you weren't really pushed the traditional way, where be an engineer, be a doctor, be a scientist, or be a solicitor of some kind. And that's not taking anything away from those very, very highly achieved life, careers. But my question to yourself is that were you equally sort of like supported in your arts journey? And
always. My grandparents raised us. They couldn't read or write, whether that be English or Punjabi. And they were just born just prior to pre-partition, and so they had a love marriage, and they always just supported each other. And that's what they've given us as to their own kids, to their grandkids. I mean, I class them as my parents. And they always supported whatever we were doing. They were saying, be the best that you can be. And I remember my mum at that time, because you can just swipe and buy cards online. I used to beg my mum, like, come with me to the box office at the local theatre and buy me tickets. And I love Willie Russell because it's for working class people, and educating Rita, Blood Brothers. They call me educating Kiran after educating Rita. And I do have a mentor in a sort of way, that is the Michael Caine, who's helped guide me in the history world, which we'll touch on upon later. But yeah, my grandparents just was saying, you don't have to be in those traditional roles, but be so much better than we were. We've given you the foundation. You're not in India anymore. You're not living through partition. They'd lost their parents at that time. You've got everything that you've got, all the tools. It's not always money that people think of, but the tools of love and support. And we flew. So here we are today.
That's so inspiring to hear, that your grandparents, from a period of pre-partition, which is 1947, for anybody who's tuning in who doesn't know the partition I'm talking about of India, where India and Pakistan were both created. Now, the question I'm arising here is that you said something really, really quite unique. Now, my parents are pre-partition as well, but they were probably a little bit older than your grandparents, because if they sort of like were around the 12, 13 years old when their partition happened, so they came in that sort of age. But I heard something really, really different in the conversation. You said it was a love marriage. Now, that's astoundingly different.
I know.
How did that happen? Just a bit of share, if you know anything about that, as you're a historian.
So my granddad, he used to talk about it himself. My granddad saw my nanny from the other village. Yes, my nan from the other village. And he knew her older sisters. And as soon as he saw her, he said, I always knew I was going to marry her. But she didn't particularly like him. So when her father got her, in those days, arranged marriage was the norm in our culture. What I should say is that my nonna, my grandfather, lost his mother during childbirth when he was young. So he raised his siblings along with his father, and his grandfather raised him. So history repeats itself. And they were quite poor. And my nanny had a bit of money, her family did. And to cut a long story short, she was told to marry somebody else. And he went to her sisters and said, listen, I know we shouldn't be doing this, but I've fallen in love with her. Even if she doesn't give me the time of day, I'm going to marry her. So one way or another, And she actually liked him. She said he was warm and caring and very supportive. She saw the way he raised his sister and the other siblings that he had. And she goes, although I was a bit distracted personality-wise, and yeah, they called the wedding off, and it was a big hoo-ha in the village at the time. But they got married and they lived a beautiful life. And honestly, I'm so proud to be their granddaughter and tell these stories.
God bless you. And I'm going to probe you a lot about your history because that's what you're such a so well known for, being the historian that you are. But we're going to delve a little bit into a bit more of your past, which I think most of your interviews don't really relay if you ask a question. So people don't actually understand that there's so much more complexity to you as an individual. So what was you went into literacy? Tell us a little bit about how, because you were supported in the arts. Please take the story further. What happened thereafter? What was the section of the world that people don't know about you is what I'm trying to expose
Wow.
here, if I may.
Think I could just relate to the text, and I think in every subject, you whether it's business, you like the journal there, or but in literature, when I was exposed to Willie Russell at such a young age from school, I could relate, like working class people going to school, getting their hustle, you
Mm.
know, um, just doing everything to have a better life, and that continued. And I was very lucky in college. I was exposed to the Maya Angelou, Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer,
Wow.
Frankenstein, and the love of books and going to the library because we couldn't afford books at that time. The
Mhm.
library was essential, and my grandparents used to say, take the 10 books out, the maximum that you can take, and just fill your mind with all
Just
this.
fill it and absorb it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it just you find one teacher that really believes in you
Mm.
and just hones into that. So I wasn't failing. I don't want to put that out. I wasn't failing in maths and science. I just was in set two for those kind of sets, for those subjects, sorry, where I was in set one in arts and drama. And that really fueled the fire. And in university, the same happened. And my teacher said, well, what do you want to do with your English and American studies degree? And I said, well, I don't, I, I don't know. What do I
Mhm.
do with that? And then they told me at that time that there's need for teachers, and you
Mm.
get a handcuff deal. So if you join for 3 years, you get a set pay. And for
Okay.
somebody from working class, during that time, I was like, well, this sounds amazing. I'm going to get paid for 3 years. That's
Mhm.
salary. Let's go. And I
Wow.
loved it.
So just to touch base, if I can, just to clarify something, that it was the most logical thing for you to do at the time, with
Mm.
a degree in uh, the English literacy and English, etc., to become a school teacher. So you went into school, but can I ask a few questions? Because I have a niece of mine who also went into the art environment, and she went to art, and she started to teach art as well. Today she's settled in Norwich, and she's settled with a family. But she took a journey to London and a place like that, and became, the Brick Lane environment, and she became a school teacher there, and she found it quite testing, quite challenging in the sense of how schools were or were not funded, and were looked after, were not looked after. Did you find any of this in your journey?
I mean, definitely. We have that pressure because so I was placed in a school in in a city, and it
Hmm.
was an area known for drug and gang violence. And I thought to myself, oh my God, what am I doing here? But where I grew up, we grew up not in my family, but we grew up around that culture because you always knew somebody who was in a gang. So it wasn't,
Mm.
we're from the streets, if that makes sense. So
Yep.
street life wasn't, it's always been a part of me. And so I was familiar, and it wasn't the pupils. The pupils were amazing. They didn't do their homework, but they loved like talking, and you have to pester them. And, it was really challenging sometimes with these young people. But it was the paperwork and the restrictions and the red tapes. And nobody tells you about that. Once you go from university to then going into teaching, I know it's all changed now. We only had one mentor, but you have a class of 30 and you're thrown in the deep end, and it's
Right.
sink or swim. And I don't, I've never regretted leaving, but there was always a part of me that said, oh my God, I love books and teaching and learning. What do I do now? But I'm so blessed that I've continued that
That
through my work.
journey.
Yeah, but
Th-
teaching's great.
Yeah, I was gonna say the teaching part of it is lovely. And this is a question there that you said earlier that you just needed that one
Mm.
teacher to believe in you. Now you became that one teacher for many of those students, I'm very certain. I know today, but we'll talk about that in a moment. I know today there is a part of your career, your life, your business, your CIC that you deliver in the world that you've been recognized for, that actually is heritage lottery funded, but also it is working with teachers and schools, sorry, in specific, like 25 different schools. And that's just such an amazing achievement. But we're going to touch that in a moment. So you kind of have kept in that teacher vein by connecting with the students, haven't you?
Definitely. Listen, I thought when I left teaching, when the decision came, I had no life in teaching. I was constantly, parent-teacher meetings, paperwork, and I was scared to tell my family. So I was the first grandchild to graduate. And I
Wow.
felt like I've got a steady job. What do I do after this? So that decision, I thought they were going to take it really bad. They didn't. They just said, if you're going to leave teaching, make sure you have another job lined up.
Wow.
And great for me because a friend of mine said, have you joined why don't you join the NHS at that time, doing like sexual health talks
Mhm.
about AIDS and HIV, and because it's not discussed in the South Asian community.
Right.
So
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
I jumped, and it was fun because again, you work with children in alternative learning, or actually, I should say young people, not children.
Mhm.
Um, and again, you go out to gangs and you go to communities where it's heavily with drugs, and you talk about, keeping safe and making sure that you know how to sign up to a doctor and where the nearest hospital is. So it's all that, and people don't realize that in South Asian culture, there's a lot of gang culture as well. So we turned a blind eye,
Mhm.
um, but we needed to have that education. So I mean, I loved that period also.
So that era, even from moving into the gang culture and the NHS structures and helping them, what was really, really beautiful there, I heard that you're saying that your parents, grandparents actually still supported you for that jump. And you
Mm.
thought they're going to be a bit upset because of the fact that you had a stable job and you were in a good position, and because you came from um, meager and humble backgrounds, that you thought, hang on a second, they're going to take this badly because they're going to say to me, look, can you just keep your job? Can you be so grateful? That's so eye opening and so forward thinking, and I think that's such a blessing in disguise as well, because today we have, the Kiran that we know as being the historian and somebody who's made some great changes and was involved in the centenary of the royal family and so forth. And I know at the moment there's other reasons why the royal family has been mentioned, with reference to Oprah and the rest of the family there. But my point here is that you really have achieved so much. So I want to take this into a little bit of a conversation. You're involved in multiple service to society and community. I can see clearly that you were serving children, then you went into serving gang culture and a community again. But I ask you a question that you were picked up to be astoundingly, what a great achievement in life. And this is so empowering for us to hear. Not only the fact that this is International Women's Week, or day was yesterday, but this should be celebrated. You're truly an inspiration. You were called, but there's a funny story around this, I know, but you were called to be a torchbearer for the Olympic Games 2020.
Yes,
How
yes.
amazing! Please tell us a little bit about the
I've
story.
got a surprise for you viewers. Just 1 second. This is my
Oh my
original
goodness!
Olympic torch from 2012, and you can see the burn mark where they put the flame.
Oh, that is so brilliant. I'm going to have to do a screenshot of that one. Come on, then up it goes. Ready? Three, two, one. There we are. I'm going to post that out later. But hang on a second. That's the original. That's one of
That's
the
the
ones you've actually.
absolutely, yeah, original.
Those are
Um,
priceless. They're
that I
priceless.
ran with. I ran with this. They give it to you back. Um, and
That's
yeah,
priceless, Kiran.
thank you.
That's priceless. It's the real deal. I'm just so inspired by the fact that you were selected. Now, I know the funny story about this, so you're going to have to share it with our audience and our viewers tonight. What actually happened?
So I didn't realize behind the scenes, my sister actually nominated me, and
Wow.
I'll go into why I got selected for this, but I'll tell the story first. So my sister behind my back, apparently there was a call for volunteers and people making a change in the community. So she sent the form off, and I get a call from a gentleman um, to say, "Oh, hello, you haven't sent this form across because we're going to decide next week." I was like, "Who?" I thought it was my brother and my sister playing a prank. So I put the phone down and I text my sister because she was at an event with my brother. And I said, haha, it's really funny. And she said, I don't even know what you're on about. But the gentleman called back and he said, listen, I don't know who you think I am, but I'm going to send you an email. This is who I am. Because this is back in 2012. So we weren't really on the WhatsApps and,
No, that's right. Yeah.
And so I was like, okay. And he said, this is the detail. And he knew things about me. And I was like, well, this must be original. So, this must be authentic. And so I sent over the information that who I am, and never thought anything of it. And then in April 2012, when they announced all of the Olympic torchbearers, that's when my name was mentioned. And I got a letter. I got the uniform as well. I was going to wear that tonight. Yeah, and I was recognised services to charity. So I nearly lost out.
I was going to say to I'm just getting over this conversation here a second. Hey, hi. We're from the Olympic Torch-Bearing Committee, and you've been nominated. We've given you a form. You haven't filled it in. Can you please double check on these few things? Oh, bleep, bleep, bleep. Stop messing me around and put the phone down because you think it's your brother. How funny is that?
Because my family always play pranks on me. Like, hi, I'm the gas person. If I'm at work, I'm the gas. And so we always have a laugh in our family. So I thought it was one of them. And so when I got the email and we confirmed, and they actually knew stuff about my story, I was like, well, somebody must have told them. And that's when my sister came clean. She didn't think I would ever get nominated because obviously 2012, there's so many people doing amazing things.
Yeah. But thing is, when you're doing those amazing things, you're doing it with just being the best, right? Your language, but you're not trying to do it to get selected. So being recognized is something really special, and that honor goes to your sister there. But I'm going to ask a couple of questions if you don't mind. You were involved in this particular period of life when you delivered, and I'm going to ask a bit in a moment what it was like to be the Olympic torchbearer and what was the day like. Do you feel that in life, we always ask our guests specifically that, was there a defining moment, something that really kind of changed the trajectory of your world? We call it kind of smelling the roses, feeling the breeze on your body, breathing and hearing yourself and feeling yourself. When you become real present, that this is it. Do you have a moment like this?
Yeah, I think I woke up and I wanted to change. And the reason I was called up for services, I'd lost my nan. And as a family, we raised money for charity, just as she had a cancer that couldn't be cured. And I woke up, I fell into a small depression after she passed. But one day I was just like, you can't exist anymore. You've got to live. And I was only young at the time. I was in my early 20s. And it changes. A death of a parent changes you, that you don't even realize it's possible. It takes you to the brink. And at the time my nanny passed, I was at the height of my career. Everything. And you have to understand, when South Asians came over from India or Africa at the time, they came with like £2, £3 in their pockets. They managed to buy their own homes and educate us while holding full-time jobs where they don't know the language. And hence why we talked about the teaching, and I was scared, I've got a set salary. But that my moment was, you've got to live this. You've got to live your life now, and you don't have to be sad. So although I still think about my nanny, I was going to say, just as long as I think about her, I knew she would be sad, me always crying and being in this depression.
Bless you. Bless you. That was my call to yourself, that basically losing a loved one, in 2018, sadly, I lost my mother as well. Very dear to ourselves. And mum lived with myself. My father still lives with myself. We're so grateful that he's still alive. But my question was that you got yourself to a situation where I suppose you could say you emotionally broke. You got to a state of depression. That is very normal post somebody who's very close to you. So what did you do to dig deep to get yourself back up and clear again? Because you just said a moment ago that your nan, I call her your nan, your mum, didn't actually spend, that wouldn't have liked you to spend your time crying. So are there any other shares that you could give if somebody's going through something very similar in their world?
I was lucky because I had my family. And if anybody knows, they know that we're super tight. We don't need other friends from outside. We're super close. And my Nana was still alive. My grandfather was still alive at this period. And he said, call on me, like I'm still here.
Mhm.
So come to me and I'll help you through this period. And he honestly did. And if anybody out there is going through the same thing, it, it's life. I don't think I don't think my grandmother prepared me. What would I do in a life without her? She
Mhm.
knew she was dying because she had cancer. I wasn't prepared.
Mhm.
And just talking, I lost a lot of friends because young people don't understand death at such a young age.
No.
And I also lived, I was raised by my grandparents. So it really, just my grandfather and my family, we just was like, okay, let's just take each day
As it
and
comes.
let's just do one thing at a time. So even if that's just waking up and not crying, that
Mm.
was a big achievement. I know it sounds silly, but just having a laugh and not feeling guilty for laughing, about simple things. And slowly, surely, I got like myself together. And then the Olympic torch, when I got that call, it came out of the blue, and I was just like, there's not that many Sikhs that got to be a torchbearer.
Absolutely.
And so to be just a Sikh woman, and my community went crazy because they do these announcements, and I was on TV doing interviews, and everyone in the community was rooting. And that's when I was just like, if I'm not doing it for myself, let's do it for my nanny because she loved
Wow.
sports.
That's so beautiful to
And my
hear.
nana was here. So he was just like, now that we've given you the tools, be free, go and do it and see where it takes you. And I wasn't prepared for where it was going to take me. But
So he,
that's the moment.
so your granddad, your nanaji, your maternal grandfather
Mm,
saw it for both of them.
yes,
Yeah, because they
yes.
came together. They spent most of their life together. I love it. And the beautiful bit that you just shared there, which is very powerful, that the person who has passed into the light wouldn't want you to be in that sorrow state
Mm,
themselves. So I suppose the only way is up, isn't it? So you picked yourself back up and got yourself back into the game and started
yeah.
realizing that was such a beautiful point you've made there. And I really want to iterate this, if I may, for the audience and for our tribe members, that it not to feel guilty about having fun and a laugh post a death,
Mm,
because it somehow does that to you. Then you tend to feel that there's a guilt attached, that mum's no longer here, one of the parents is no longer here. So should I be laughing and joking and having a laugh? Should I be smiling from here onwards, etc.? Is that fair?
that's fair. Yes.
Yeah. So you're a tight family. You became the Olympic torchbearer. What was it like?
Um, crazy, crazy. I thought they told me the plan, you're gonna run here. Then they said, no, you're not, you're gonna close the stage at Cannon Hill Park.
Wow.
And I remember just going from interview to interview, and I was just like, I'm not even a celebrity. What am I doing? Like, I had an entourage, and it was just such crazy. And my granddad got to meet Sir Cliff Richard,
Mm.
and honestly, the
That would have
park
been
had sold out.
wonderful because obviously your grandfather came here quite early, so that would have been he definitely would have
Yeah.
seen Chris Pritchard at his
Summer Holiday was his favorite film, but it was crazy. So the park had sold out, and I was told I was going to go to the park, and I was like, but my family are going to miss out. And honest to God, they rolled out the red carpet. How many tickets do you want? We'll get you front row and center with your family.
Oh,
And it was so nice because they were there on the journey, and it was a crazy moment. 2012 in our city. It was just absolutely crazy. I loved it. It came in a blaze because I
yeah,
thought I was doing one thing, then another thing, and it was all a blur towards the end. And I even had my own security at one point. It was so
really?
crazy. Yeah, because
Wow.
they were like, we'll have to escort you out the park. And then, you know, afterwards, I didn't realize there's so many media interviews, and I was offered so many deals after that. And I was like, well, I just want to go back to my everyday life. And
I just want to be me.
but I
I was
enjoyed
helping people. I was
it.
helping people a moment ago, and now people are saying, "Can you sign my autograph?"
Yes.
Oh, goodness me.
But
Well,
I take
please,
so
Karen.
much
Yeah.
pride. I was going to say, I take so much pride in representing our South Asian culture as well.
Yeah.
It's never going to come around again, that moment in 2012.
Absolutely not, never. And you are a significant part of history that was made that time, and very, very proud, proud Asian who would actually say that the Olympic torchbearing, as I said, there was hardly any Sikhs that were actually involved in that journey. So, that was such an accolade, and well done to you. Mike, if you've just joined us, apologies. We've just come to halfway. You are here. Sorry to interrupt you there, but this is episode 81. I can't believe it myself, but 81 of the Empower Hour show for Salam Radio and the Inspired Tribe, and myself, Sukhi Wahiwala, as the host. Today we have Kiran Sahota, who is a historian, an individual who's a torchbearer, a absolutely tremendously empowering individual who studied the arts and has not necessarily studied history, but has moved into the space. Please listen back to how she overcame the loss of an elder through cancer, and how she stood back on her feet and got out of the darkness of a real tight situation of being depressed, and turned her life around, and today is on her third historian project, helping over hundreds of students, over 25 schools, to assist through her CIC, which is a community incorporated company. Now, if you've just joined us, please stay with us to the end. Please do like, subscribe, and comment, and support us as an organization as we're bringing more and more people to yourself. Kiran, back to yourself. So today, Kiran, you are no less than a celebrity, even though you may have all of those celebrity friends like Sir Cliff Richard and people of that sort of nature. I am not worthy. But my point here is, well, and you're such a humble person with it, though. You've done so many beautiful things from such humble backgrounds. What are you up to today? Because I know you help schools. Would you mind telling us a little bit about some of your CICs, and also a little bit about the projects you've run, and how you became an historian as well?
Oh my God, I don't know if we've got enough time to cover all that.
We've got plenty of time.
So after the Olympic torch in 2012, I started getting bookings to talk. So I set up Believe in Me, a community interest company.
Okay.
Because I needed somewhere that people can contact me. And it was always to empower young people and women through education. And so we talked about a lot of how to get past that situation. And then I saw a news article 2015 about Sikh soldiers. And so I was like, well, let me find out about my family history. And what happened is I started talking to some people. I was working in corporate at that time. And I had two projects. I didn't think that they were going to go to national level, like we're touring up and down the country and internationally. The first was in 2016, the Indian Victoria Cross winners in First World War. And the second was Journey from Home.
I can remember reading about that and watching it. And that was, now we know today, that was you who instigated it.
I'm the creator and everything.
Yes, lovely.
So, and then it took us to now what you're talking about, and current project, the Indian Women in War project, which was stopped during COVID. So we're just in our research and development period. But yeah, it started with me just wanting to know more about my own history. and it was such a struggle because history is dominated by males.
Yes.
And I didn't think that I'd even get an exhibition. So a lecturer gave me some letters to read. There's nobody in my family that is even in the war, but what was I going to do with these letters? And so I taught myself. And
Wow.
what should we do? I didn't know. I don't come from a history or military background, so I didn't know ranking. I didn't know historical terms. The terminology was all different. And so I was like, well, what do I do? And so just with the help of people crossing my path, because I already had the Believe in Me CIC set up, they were like, well, why don't you go for funding? And it was only 10,000 for my first exhibition. And that really set the light. It got media attention. We just sent out press releases and people turned up. We were on a Visit China website for some reason. I don't know how it got there.
Wow.
So group visiting Birmingham at that time. And that was the start for all this. And my third project, Indian Women in War, is to look at the contributions made by Indian women through, to World War I and to World War II, and also then connecting it today at the farmers' protest, because there's so many women who are not silent and fighting for their families and their lives.
This is so relevant and so powerful, and so needed. I had one of my previous guests, his name was Naroop, and he's from Amit and Naroop, the team who brought the Sing project forward. Now that project within itself has become a cult project. It's a cult project where the people they had no high quality, high resolution stories behind Sikhs from around the globe. You're in the same space. You are on the edge of creating, I think, something magical, because it's going to be a cult project without a doubt. It's already there. So my question to yourself is very simply, is that did you even believe that this is going to be as big as it's going to become?
No. No, I just, for my first exhibition, we were in the back room of a gallery, and we were told that nobody would come, and women came, and it really just started for women of my own age to say, oh, well, we didn't know that, because history and education is not always accessible once you leave the education system. So even for me, trying to find archive material was a struggle, because I wasn't within a university or museum.
Association, you mean? Yeah. So you couldn't necessarily log in with anybody else's versions of the login systems. Completely.
Yeah, and I didn't even know what an archive was. So, I thought, well, how do I do this? And to still be here and still be dominating and working with, from 2 volunteers to now a waiting list, even during COVID, to nearly being shut down. We're still here. We're still creating films. We're still creating programs. We just launched our Commonwealth Day resource pack, which people can find on the website. We'll talk about that later. Yes. But yeah, women are taking over.
I'm really well. I think genuinely is that scenario when we say women are taking over. The reality is that they always were there, just that nobody was really recognizing it. And this is what I'm talking about. That beautiful element of actually being in a position where you're honored to be a part of history, not once, twice, but for the 3rd time, if not for the 4th time, if you count the Olympic Games as well. But to actually be a person who's creating a cult study on the history of women within war. Well done to you. Well done to you. Really, really well done to you. There's something I want to ask, if I can probe just a little bit about this. But when you're talking about, you mentioned the fact that you've got this determination to create, to be the best yourself. Yes. How did that get you recognized? Because you're very well respected within the industry. Did you find it easy to get the traction? You said that you had to do it yourself. You had a partner. We didn't have an academic audience or academic structure behind of you. How did you manage to push through these struggles?
I think it was a struggle because community projects have never reached this level before. So the military were taking note, other academics were taking note, who is Kiran Sahota. And it changed that you can come from a community project person into this field. And it was honestly amazing. But the attention, during the centenary of the First World War, when David Cameron said, get community people involved in Commonwealth knowledge and contribution, I'm one of them. So I have got to thank Sir David Cameron for pledging that, more communities should do something. I didn't fit in with my community. There were community projects, but they weren't for me. It was run by men doing men's stories. I always look at history through a female perspective because I've grown around strong women. But when we talk about where did it reach to, the height of it, we had young people at Westminster Abbey, 2018, the centenary celebrations, in front of the royal family. A young boy with a turban was laying a wreath. And when we talk about just the young people and represent that clip, it was live on BBC, went around the world. I had messages, he had messages, and we're representing communities that often get overlooked. We were in the People's Procession. We were honoured at the House of Commons during the centenary celebrations. I mean, this does not happen. And
it doesn't happen without grit and, determination, and you're full of that. There's something that sticks in my brain, which you've just shared a moment ago, with reference to women's representation and men's representation, and just aligning with our current global movement towards respecting and recognizing the feminine energy of the world, should I say. Can I ask, what struggles have you had in actually getting people to take your version, your aspect, your delivery of females being and being taken seriously? Because I know there'll be a lot of rejection. Oh, that's not important. Being rude, by the way, and in that context, but that's not important. It's only the men we want to follow and what they did and what they didn't do. So how have you been overcoming this in specific?
I think it's just been always determined about my work and being confident in my work. And that has transpired to communities on women wanting to know more. We've got the army looking like, what's Kiran Sahota doing next with the projects? So they are taking notice. I think we didn't have a space. And before, I found out academics were just in their universities and military were doing one thing, but we all had a message of, let's share the Commonwealth contribution. And I've managed to get us all together, open a space for women. I never apologize for making that space. And as long as I continue to live and God gives me the will, I will continue to do that. I think it's so important to me. Women take up that space and become the leaders. One day I want to retire. So I work with young people to say, you've got to be the archivist and you've got to be the historians, because if you're complaining that, why is that person telling our history when it should be us? Well, then what are you doing about it? And there are struggles. People didn't want the project to go ahead. When I had my first exhibition, there was opposition. How dare she take that space and think she's a historian when she doesn't know anything about history or the battles. And I look at personal stories. I don't look at the dates of the battles and go into that. I look at, what was it like for the Indian soldier and compare that to the British soldier. And sometimes it's quite the same in situations. So it's to educate that, and let's just call it for what it is. There's not that many people that have the big names on the first ever exhibition to be supporting partners. My work speaks for itself, and it comes across as that they're still supporting partners, and these are national organizations, and they rolled the dice. They believed in me, they saw the vision, and we're still being recognized today. So honestly, thank you to you all for just wanting to know more.
The honest truth is we do want to know more, and this is such a beautiful mission. But I want to be specific. You also are inspiring, as you talk about the centenary. You're talking about 2018, as in 1918, from being the start of the war, centenary. So my question to yourself is that you are an individual, not in the slightest, you're absolutely inspiring, and such a what I rarely say this, a brilliant individual. So my question to yourself is, how are you inspiring the next generation, and then obviously into the Commonwealth projects you're working right now? You're working with 25 odd schools. I mean, come on, that's amazing for such an organization to be delivering.
And there's one woman, it's just me sometimes, just running everything, doing the PR, doing
That is
rereading.
That's astounding, astounding, and the sheer fact of there's the core question and answer that you said there. So I'm really excited to share this information and enhance it for yourself, because you said that you're a single woman who's doing this on her own, and on the same token, you're also talking about individuals. You're living exactly the advice you were given, and you're giving out to others, where you're saying, if somebody is not representing you, if somebody else is telling the story of, let's say, the story of Sikhs in war, or Muslims in war, or Hindus in war, or Christians in war, if somebody else is doing that narrative, talking and using their lens, it's obviously not going to be an accurate representation, to a certain extent. And you're saying, don't stand on the side of the riverbank telling somebody to swim, kick their feet. You're saying, hang on a second, if it's not right, jump in, grab them, get them out of there, and then show that you can show up as well. This, for me, I've got to say, wow, that's just so beautiful from such a powerful young lady that you are. But please talk a little bit about how the schools are running, and how you're touching the lives of the generations that come from deprived backgrounds, and possibly even BAME as well, but also how you're moving into the Commonwealth environment as well, please.
I mean, I'm a writer now, apparently. I write in articles, and this really has given me the opportunity. But working with the young people, what we do is we engage them on the project. So I although I have a historian from the funding to pay a historian to make sure that it's all accurate, but I actually go in the files myself. I select every single piece that would be in the project. I oversee everything. And my work ethic comes from my family, like my parents and my grandparents. And I do that in the young people. You have to get up every day if you want to make change. And they come on the project, they learn. We were the first ever community group, to celebrate last year Commonwealth Day at Sandhurst in Surrey on an army base. It's never happened before. They don't welcome community groups. And that's just one aspect. And Indian Women in War, we got closed down because of COVID. We're slowly coming back, given the restrictions, but we've got more females than ever on the project, and we're going to come back, and we're going to be bigger, stronger than and better informed as well. We're juggling everything, but I always work like I'm poor, if that makes sense. You sleep when you're dead, I always say, and you can have that.
Deep, young lady.
Yeah.
So repeat that again, please.
Just I work like I'm poor. Like I just wake up and I'm so determined, and I have that beast mentality of a work ethic. My granddad always say that if you're going to do something, do it to the best of your ability, or don't do it at all. Turn up on time. Always do what you promised that you said you're going to do. And I've promised the communities that I'm going to create projects for them. And so our supporting partners, if they have like internships or careers, they work with me to get them into that kind of environment, because as we know, Black and Asian students are not going into higher education for history, and we've got to just change that. So thank you to everybody that just gets involved and makes it all happen, I think, and lets me get some sleep.
I'm just about to ask you that question you said about sleep. I was going to say, so let me get this clear. So you're on it all the time. You've got so many things on the project. You're so determined. Well done to you. This has been a wonderful interview. Thank you. And I was going to ask you, do you ever sleep?
Sometimes, when I'm not juggling emails, but yeah, I mean, I have my sister who helps. She works full time, but helps me on the project. So yeah, I mean, I get some sleep, but you just gotta continue doing what you're doing. I love what I do. It's just unfortunately it doesn't pay so well that we can afford to have other people, if that makes sense. So, but there's nothing in the project that I wouldn't want to learn or I wouldn't want. So I'm a perfectionist when it comes to this work, because I've still got so much to prove. So when I came into this industry with no history background, people were like, well, it can't be done. She's going to slow down. And if you look since 2016 to where we are today, I've delivered like 2 national projects and now onto my 3rd national project. So I've had no break in between. So if you want it, you go out there and there's no excuses. So I
Mm.
love doing, and I love being around women historians as well. So they
This
push
is
me.
it's beautiful to hear, and you're very specific in the arena that you're going into. This leads me into kind of like we walk into the body of work. You're very clearly going to get this over the line, and you've probably got another eye on another project as well. But I have a little question to yourself. So we, at this particular point in an interview, always ask every one of our guests in a very humble way about legacy, about what you're going to leave here on the earth, in essence. Now, there's no doubt you're going to leave a brilliant body of work, and you're going to continue to grow that and be the best you possibly can. But my question to yourself is, if there was such a thing, and we're not pulling this, we're not igniting this, but the way I see it is that person's going to leave this planet at the, in this living, in this life, the moment, the second they were destined to. So if I ask you a question, something along the lines of an epitaph, here lies Kiran Sahota, the lady who, what would you say?
Inspired individuals to make a change and be their best selves.
Wow. Hang on a second. Inspired individuals to make a change and be the best self.
Be
That's
their
awesome.
best selves, yeah, because
And what does that mean to you, please?
just I thought I was just gonna have a one-off project. It continued, and I got inspired by people around me. And be your best selves, like be your authentic self, show up, and people will love that rather than the fake version. So be your best self, apply yourself, and that's what I've been taught. And I hope everybody else takes that, like just apply yourself, and hopefully, doors will start to open, and the dark period won't loom so much, because when we hit rock bottom,
Mm-hmm.
we think we're going to stay there because we don't have any help. And I know what it's like to be in those communities, and I know what it's like, and you get out of it, and it's fun when you get out of it.
Mm. Wow. It's fun when you get out of it. That's just so deep. Because I'm not joking, seriously, because I have a side of our businesses where we scholarship people through business, and we help them
Mm,
grow their companies and invest in their brain and their strategy and structure. And it's really rewarding to be able to help somebody in a space where they never thought there was any option, or there was an opportunity, so they could see the wood from the trees in per se. Yes, so that's so powerful. I love it. And this leads me to in the dark moments, you have a warming time. There's something that pulls you out. You went through a deep depression, and thank you so much for being so honest and open with this as well, and showing the other side of Kiran Sahota, the real human being side of you, and how you had to face these things. I'm so inspired by your nan's conversation, your grandfather's conversation. Are there any words you would like to share about them? Maybe even give their names, because this interview is going to be sealed in time.
mm. I mean, Bhajan Singh was my grandfather, and Surjit Kaur was my grandmother. And I'm just so proud, and I wish they were here to see it. And I know my granddad got to see some of it, but you often think, well, would they think of this, and would they be proud? I know they said it, but you just want to be the best for them,
Hmm.
because we didn't have so much growing up, and I know they're worried about that. Like,
Bless you.
will they be set? And and they went on to see it. So you know, I, I don't know what to say. That my story is different to everybody else's, but I know that when you're in a dark period, you have to find the strength from somewhere,
Hmm.
and and you'll get up. And that's my main message, that you won't stay depressed. You won't stay depressed. It's just a period of your life. And
That you to flip around. Yes, absolutely.
yeah.
Charge. There's such a lovely conversation there, and I just want to iterate something for the viewers tonight. And you know, it's not going to be dark forever. Somebody, somewhere, there will be a light. You have to go toward it. So, in those moments, I just want to really honor your elders. And I would say that as celestial light transitions, they went
Mm,
from being physically in front of you to within you and around you. So, when we said we didn't get them to see certain things, and life has been different for myself since 2018 as well. But the reality of life is that they are there, but not necessarily in person, but in spirit as well. So we tend to still to be able to share and talk with them, but in a very different way. So thank you for sharing that. Now, my question to yourself is, in those dark down moments, do you have any kind of mantra or some kind of, we ask for a wisdom quote that helps you pick yourself up and may help one person listening tonight to pick themselves up and say, I can do what Kiran does. I can be like that.
I think there's a great quote that my sister exposed me to from Winnie the Pooh, believe it or not. And it says, if there is ever a time that we are not together, remember that you are braver than you think you are, and stronger than you think. So that makes me like, okay, wow. Even when she's not here, or I know my grandfather and my grandmother's not here, just have that strength that you are strong. And, I'm doing this interview today. So, after my grandfather, I thought, that's it. I've lost everything again. And how am I going to get back up? But the project saved me, and to people that continue opening doors for me, I don't know why they're doing it, but it's because of them. They just put me on another platform and we just keep going. There was a life before the history world. And I'm glad that we're doing this interview. I think people forget that at this age, I lived a life and I don't talk about it because whichever chapter you meet me at, that's where we're going to go and we're going to move forward from there. And so this has been great to go back a little and just remember those days, but you always remember your beginnings because that's sometimes where you end up. So remember and cherish those moments because that's what drives me to come here. And thank you to you for inviting me and allowing me to speak about my truth and my story.
Yeah, and that's so empowering, being able to realize that you're stronger than you think you are, and you're braver than you think you are. Yeah. Those are deep. And I have to, in this particular moment, honor Am Goller, who's actually the founder and director of Abstract PR, who manage all of our guest line and communication. So she made it happen with connecting with yourself as well. So thank you, Am. And I just want to, if there was a message you want to share with anybody who's listening today, who's having that dark moment, that you've sent that they can stand on their feet, they can be stronger, they're braver than they think they are. But you were supported. You're supporting many students now. Can you tell us any story that has really changed and touched you with the transition? Even the gentleman who put the young lad who put the wreath down in the school time, in the centenary. What was it like? What's the standout story that stands for you?
I think that was the moment, the centenary, because we're better to be recognized than in the centenary celebrations itself, and to meet the royal family. Who would have thought that? And that's a standout story. And all the women that we talk about, contributing, that's who I really think is a standout moment, because some of these women don't win awards. So how do we tell their story? So we find certain passages and bring them to a platform so they're not forgotten. So you don't have to win an award to change the world and do brave things. And that's a standout moment. And to the young people that continue, I know it's not easy in their communities to get away from that life, because once you're embraced in gang culture or different sectors, it's not easy. But they continue to be on the project, and they're credit to themselves, and I'm so proud. I've asked them to tune in tonight, so I hope that they're listening. But they push me. They honestly push me because I see myself in them. So it works in a circle, if that makes sense.
That's so wonderful. And if anybody would like to touch base with you, communicate, support you, donate to your charity, donate to the cause that you are creating, this movement of supporting people who don't have anybody else to support them, how can they get in touch with you, Kiran?
They can contact me on Believe in Me CIC website, which is www.believeinme.org. bimcic.com. We're also on Instagram and all the other socials as well.
And are they the same? BIMCIC?
BIMCIC, yes. And we've just launched our Commonwealth Day pack as well. So there's art activities free of charge for communities and families to get involved in. Yeah, and I'd love for people to get in contact and start their journey in
So if
South
they,
Asian
if
history.
that's right. So if they have a challenge of how to maybe search their own family history, because that's, you've done this, and search history of somebody. Is there anywhere they can sort of, you can point them? Is it on the website? Can they, is there any
Yeah,
learning to be done there?
they can go on the website. We've got links, and they can follow the links or they can get in touch because unlike I think British history, you can, ancestry.com can bring up links. We can't do that for South Asian history
Yeah.
because it's very complicated because of partition. But they can get in contact, and either myself or one of our supporting partners can help them on their journey.
Wow.
And they can start their own, or even if they just want to find out stories, not even if they want to do family stuff, if you just want to find out what we've been up to, the research that we found to date, they can find that on the website, and they can find out more about Commonwealth contribution.
That's so inspiring. And on behalf of the Salam Radio crew, the Inspired Tribe, our listeners, myself, Sukhi Wahiwala, and anybody who listens to this via podcast, via radio, or via YouTube, I would like to thank you humbly and wholeheartedly, Kiran Sahota. Thank you very much, and keep shining, keep being bright. Thank you for being our guest, our 81st guest on the Empower Hour show today.
Thank you.
And for everybody else who's just joining us, please do scrub back to the start. This is a live feed, so you'll be able to watch it right from the start. Please listen to the diamonds and the gems the pearls of wisdom that were shared throughout the whole of this interview. It is going to be a life-changing, how one young lady could stand and create change in this world and continue to do so and speak for the unspoken as well. Next week, this is the Empower Hour show, live on internet and radio, Salam Radio. Please download the application and listen to your heart's content. I would like to remind you that this is an event that happens show that happens every Tuesday between 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock UK time. Next week we have an amazing guest. His name is Javed Jaffrey, which is a Bollywood actor, and you'll know him. We'll introduce him a bit closer to the time. So it's good night from tonight